Thank you for joining us again for the life of Joseph, from trials to triumph. The dark days of imprisonment are over, and a light of opportunity begins to shine. How does a prisoner become one of the most powerful leaders in Egypt? What happened in Pharaoh's dream that brought Joseph to the forefront? And will Joseph have the wisdom to handle a task that could change the fate of an entire nation? This is the chapter of unexpected opportunities you won't want to miss.
The grandeur of Pharaoh's court was breathtaking. Marble columns soared toward the heavens, etched with intricate carvings that seemed to tell stories of gods and kings. Golden torches lined the hall, their flames flickering against polished stone walls, casting shadows that danced like living beings. I stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of 100 eyes upon me, nobles, advisors, and guards, each one silent, waiting for Pharaoh to speak. "Since God has made all this known to you," Pharaoh's voice rang out, strong and deliberate, "there is no one as wise and discerning as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." His words echoed in the vast hall, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders as Pharaoh stepped down from his throne. He took his signet ring, a symbol of authority and trust, and slipped it onto my finger. The cool metal was a stark contrast to the warmth of his gaze. Servants brought fine linen robes, draping them over me with careful precision. A golden chain was placed around my neck, its weight both literal and symbolic. As Pharaoh's chariot carried me through the streets of Egypt, the reality of my new position began to sink in. The city was alive with activity. Vendors shouting their wares, children darting between stalls, and laborers toiling in the heat. But as I passed, the noise quieted. People turned to bow, their voices murmuring in awe. "This is Joseph," they whispered, "the man who interprets dreams." Their reverence was humbling, and I whispered a prayer under my breath. "Lord, guide me. This is not by my strength, but yours." The ride ended at the gates of Pharaoh's palace, but the journey ahead was just beginning. The enormity of what lay before me, the responsibility of preparing Egypt for both abundance and famine, was overwhelming. Yet, beneath the weight of it all, there was peace. I knew that this moment was not an accident. Every trial, every moment of suffering, had led me here, to this place of honor and purpose. That night, as I knelt in prayer, I sought wisdom for the task ahead. The dreams had been clear, but the work to fulfill them was just beginning. That night, the grandeur of the palace faded into silence. The halls, once bustling with activity, were now still, lit only by the faint glow of torches. I knelt on the cool marble floor of my chamber, my heart heavy with gratitude and trepidation. "Lord," I whispered, "you have lifted me from the pit to this place of honor. Help me to lead wisely and faithfully, for this is not by my strength, but yours." The weight of Pharaoh's words from earlier still echoed in my mind. "You shall be in charge of my palace," he had declared. The enormity of the responsibility overwhelmed me. I was no longer just Joseph, the boy who once tended sheep in the hills of Canaan, or the slave who toiled in Potiphar's house. I was now a ruler, second only to Pharaoh himself, tasked with saving an entire nation. My new role demanded not just wisdom, but vision. The dreams Pharaoh had shared, 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine, were vivid in my mind. The task was clear: prepare Egypt for what lay ahead. But how? The logistics, the coordination, the sheer scale of the effort, it was unlike anything I had ever faced. I stood by the window, gazing out at the sprawling city bathed in moonlight. The hum of life still lingered faintly, a reminder of the people who now depended on me. Farmers, merchants, laborers, families. They were unaware of the trials to come, unaware of the preparation needed to survive. Every trial has brought me to this moment, I thought. The pit, the prison, even the betrayal of my brothers. They were all steps in God's plan. A sense of calm washed over me as I reflected on this truth. The journey had been long and painful, but it had not been without purpose. I resolved to dedicate myself fully to the task ahead, trusting that the same God who had carried me through the darkest valleys would guide me in the days to come. The next morning, I rose with a renewed determination. The work of preparation began immediately, and every decision carried the weight of the future. The 7 years of abundance were unlike anything Egypt had ever seen. Fields of wheat stretched endlessly to the horizon, their golden heads swaying gently in the breeze. Farmers worked tirelessly, their laughter mingling with the rustle of grain. The harvests were so bountiful that barns overflowed, their wooden beams creaking under the weight of stored grain. New silos were built in every city, towering structures that stood as monuments to the years of plenty. I traveled across the land, overseeing the collection and storage of grain. Each city had its own storehouses, and I ensured they were filled to capacity. The roads were alive with activity, oxen pulling carts laden with sacks of wheat, traders shouting their wares, and children running alongside, their faces glowing with curiosity. Save for the future, I urged the people wherever I went. These years of abundance will not last forever. Some listened, nodding solemnly as they worked to gather and store the excess. But others dismissed my warnings with a wave of their hands. "Why worry?" they said. "Look around. There is more than enough for everyone. These blessings will never end." Their words lingered in my mind, a stark reminder of human nature's tendency to take prosperity for granted. Despite the revelry that marked these years, I remained focused. My days were consumed with planning and preparation. I worked alongside the laborers, inspecting the granaries, calculating the needs of each region, and ensuring that every measure of grain was accounted for. The weight of responsibility was immense, but I carried it willingly, knowing that this was the task God had prepared me for. The celebrations of abundance were everywhere. Festivals filled the streets, the air rich with the scent of ripe grain and roasted meat. Musicians played lively tunes, and families gathered to feast under the stars. But even in the midst of this joy, I couldn't forget what lay ahead. The dreams had been clear. 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine, a reality that could not be ignored. One evening, as I watched the sunset over the Nile, its waters shimmering in hues of gold and crimson, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, thank you for these blessings. Guide me as I prepare Egypt for the trials to come. May your wisdom lead us through the years of scarcity as it has through these years of plenty." The years of abundance passed quickly, and soon the time of testing would begin. The work we had done would soon reveal its true worth. Pharaoh often summoned me to his court during those years of abundance. His trust in me was evident, and his confidence never wavered. "Joseph," he said one evening, seated on his grand throne, "Egypt thrives because of your wisdom. Your God has truly blessed us through you." His words humbled me, a reminder that the success we experienced was not of my doing, but the result of God's providence. My responsibilities were vast. I oversaw the storage of grain across all of Egypt, ensuring that every city had silos filled to capacity. I appointed overseers in each region, training them to manage their storehouses with care and precision. Weekly reports flowed into my office, a constant stream of numbers, maps, and updates that painted a picture of a nation preparing for the inevitable famine. The work was relentless, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Each decision carried weight, not just for the present, but for the future. I spent long hours reviewing strategies, traveling to inspect storehouses, and meeting with local leaders to ensure every grain was accounted for. Leadership requires not only vision, but also patience and the ability to inspire others. I learned to balance compassion with firmness, ensuring the work continued without faltering. Pharaoh's court often marveled at the efficiency of our efforts. "Joseph has brought order to chaos," one advisor remarked during a council meeting. But I knew the truth. It was not my strength or intelligence that made this possible. It was God's wisdom guiding my every step. Each night, as I knelt in prayer, I thanked Him for the clarity and strength to carry out the task He had given me. As the years of abundance continued, I grew not only in skill, but also in understanding. I saw how God had used every trial in my life. The betrayal of my brothers, the false accusation in Potiphar's house, and the long years in prison, to prepare me for this role. The famine was coming, but I felt ready, knowing that the same God who had guided me this far would not abandon me in the challenges ahead. As the final year of abundance approached, the time to transition from preparation to action drew near. The work of survival was about to begin. Standing on the palace balcony, I gazed out at the sprawling city below. The streets were alive with the glow of torchlight, their flickering flames casting shadows on the bustling marketplace. Even at this late hour, life thrived in Egypt. Merchants shouted their wares, the distant sound of music wafted through the air, and the Nile flowed steadily under the moonlit sky. A silent witness to the journey that had brought me here. It was hard to believe how far I had come. Not so long ago, I had been a boy tending sheep in the quiet hills of Canaan. My brother's betrayal had cast me into a pit, their laughter ringing in my ears as they sold me into slavery. I had served faithfully in Potiphar's house, only to be wrongfully imprisoned. Each trial had been a blow, each step filled with questions and pain. Yet, now I stood here, dressed in fine linen, a golden chain around my neck, entrusted with the fate of an entire nation. I whispered into the night, what others meant for harm, God meant for good. The words were not just a reflection of my life, but a declaration of faith. Every wound, every loss, every moment of despair had been a part of God's plan to bring me to this place. He had not abandoned me in the pit or the prison. He had been preparing me for the palace. My gaze shifted to the granaries in the distance, their towering structures filled with the grain that would sustain Egypt through the coming famine. I thought of the farmers who had toiled in the fields, the laborers who had built the storehouses, and the advisors who had worked tirelessly by my side. This was not just my story, it was a story of countless lives intertwined by God's providence. I knelt on the cool marble floor of the balcony, the stars stretching endlessly above me. Lord, I prayed, my voice steady but filled with emotion, thank you for your faithfulness. You have turned my pain into purpose, my trials into triumph. Guide me as I continue to serve, for this is not my story, it is yours. As I rose, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. It was a new day, a reminder that God's mercies are new every morning, and His plans are far greater than I could ever imagine. My journey was not just about my deliverance, but about saving countless lives. The years ahead would reveal the fullness of God's purpose. Have you ever looked back on your life and wondered why certain trials were placed in your path? Have you questioned the pain, the betrayals, the moments when everything seemed lost? I have. For years, I carried the weight of my brother's betrayal, the injustice of false accusations, and the silence of unanswered prayers. Yet, standing here now, I see clearly, those trials were not meaningless. They were steps, each one leading to this moment. Joseph's story is not just a tale of triumph, but a testament to God's faithfulness. Every pit, every prison, every painful moment was preparing me for a purpose far greater than I could have imagined. As stated in Romans 8 verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. What about you? What challenges are you facing today? What pain feels insurmountable? Trust that God is working, even when you can't see it. Like the threads of a tapestry, He weaves our lives with precision and purpose, turning even the darkest moments into something beautiful. Take heart, for your story is not over. The God who carried me through the pit and the prison stands ready to carry you too. Trust in His plan. It is always good.
In this chapter, we saw Joseph rise from the depths of prison to the heights of leadership in Egypt. Through wisdom and trust in God, he prepared the nation for the famine, proving that God's timing is always perfect. Have you ever wondered if your trials are preparing you for something greater? How can wisdom and faith guide you through challenges? Joseph's story reminds us that with God's favor, even the impossible becomes possible. But Joseph's journey is far from over. What challenges will he face as a leader? And how will his role in Egypt impact his family and his past? Join us in the next chapter to see how Joseph's story continues. If this chapter resonated with you, please like and share your reflections. How do you see God's plan unfolding in your life? And don't forget to subscribe to God's Story for more lessons of faith and perseverance. Joseph's story reminds us that every trial, every victory, is part of God's plan to bring us closer to our purpose.